Hey guys, Chad Corbett, co-founder and trainer here at alltheleads.com. This is part of our Ask the Expert series. These are long form interviews, so it's an hour long interview. If you're in a hurry and you just want to see what the bullet points are, be sure and download the Probate Cash offer summary form. Right below this video, you'll see a button. You can just download a quick couple page summary with their contact information. So what is Probate Cash? Our guest today, they're an estate advance company. So oftentimes, well, for the last 5 years, I've taught you guys to basically creatively finance create financing creatively for your clients. So when somebody needs to access the equity in the property in order to get construction done to maximize the amount of equity in the long run, we teach you to partner with contractors, the right contractors. Turn your contractor into a lender. Turn a local investor into a lender. And I get that not everybody is at that level. They're not comfortable doing that. They don't yet have those relationships. So I've been vetting companies trying to find the right fit for someone that I feel confident recommending, that where you can basically have a professional service that does that. So I will leave it at that. That's enough for now. I'll let the guys from Probate Cash explain more about what they do. So let's jump right in. All right, welcome guys. We're here today with Sean Driscoll and Robin Shapiro from Probate Cash. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, Chad, great to see you.
So we've been talking for several months now, I guess, getting to know each other and making sure that we're a good fit. And today we wanted to share with you guys kind of a look behind the curtain in the world of estate advances. And as you've heard me say before, there's lots of ways you can help families come up with money in these situations to basically bridge their way mainly to the real estate closing. But oftentimes that takes a lot of creativity and relationships. And if you're just getting started, it's sometimes difficult to get that in place in time. So these gentlemen are here today to kind of share what they do from a professional level to help you basically not have to go do that. So they can provide funding, estate advances for your families for various reasons. So guys, I'll let you introduce yourselves, kind of tell them a little bit about the company, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Sure. I'm Robin Shapiro. Chad, we've talked, as you said, over the course of the past couple of weeks. I'm the co-founder and the CEO of Probate Cash. We do business all over the United States, and we even will look at some deals in Canada. We've been in business for several years. We've funded millions of dollars of these estate advances over the course of the past couple of years. And frankly, we came to this business as an extension of other businesses I founded that were in related areas where we funded up to $1 billion of cash advances in different kinds of asset classes. Frankly, we started out in a very strange business unrelated to real estate, which is people who didn't want upfront cash but didn't want to wait for lottery prizes that were paid out over years and years. And eventually, we also extended that to people who had settled personal injury lawsuits, or being paid out over years and years, didn't want to wait. We'd give them upfront cash. And as we talked to folks and talked to attorneys we worked with and professionals in the course of those other businesses, we realized that there were a lot of people out there who were facing a similar problem, perhaps not 20 years, but who knew they were going to inherit money once a piece of property was sold and a relative had passed away. But for various reasons, needed to get some cash upfront quickly rather than having to wait what's turning out to be a year or two, not only for a sales process to complete, but for a whole estate and probate process to complete and distribute money. And I might add, what's going on right now with COVID and happening around the countries, one of the things we're seeing, and which is also creating a need for the kind of service we provide, is a lot of the courts are shut down or they're under restrictions, so they're moving much more slowly. They're prioritizing things other than probate or inheritance cases. So however long it used to take, and it took plenty long, it's now taking even longer for folks who are waiting for this process to complete, which makes it that much harder for folks who have bills to pay or need cash to fix up a property or do other things to get the cash we need. So we're in the business of basically meeting that need and found have done do transactions as small as 5,000 and as large as $1 million for folks who don't want to wait for that distribution.
Have you guys found, I mean, since March, have you found that more people are actually contacting you for the service? They're feeling the need?
It's a mixed bag. I would say it didn't start in March. I think in March, people, and I'd be interested to hear what your experience has been in just in selling houses. People were kind of stunned initially, and everybody sort of stood in place and was not prepared to take any rapid action or enter into transactions, which is understandable. I think we all felt that way. We're trying to sort of figure out how long this was going to go on, what we needed. We're seeing now that we're 2, 3, 4 months into this, and that the eviction stays, which have been in place, are starting to be lifted. The bills really have to be paid now. The property needs, courts are reopening. People are finding out things. That demand is really picking up. So I would say initially in March, when this all started around the country, it actually business slowed down a little bit, I think, for us, and I expect for others in the real estate area. But now it's starting to pick up, particularly for the part of the world we address and serve, which is folks who are looking for upfront cash.
Yeah, what we found is it is regional, but there are certain regions where the judicial backlogs are tremendous. I mean, some courts, some records rooms still have not reopened.
Right.
Just getting the probate data. So, there's a lot of families that are sitting in queue that haven't even been able to initiate the probate process. So they're probably, some of those are going to be in dire need of it could be months before they, progress through. So, but it's, most areas, people are still moving along. There's a nice rally in the real estate side of things. There's a lot of activity because we have way less, about 40% less inventory for the spring and the same amount of buyers for now. So it's the people who are initiating probate are definitely, there are some challenges, and it's a slower process in some regions, but across the board, it's 95% of the country is moving through probate at pretty normal, pretty normally. But of course, your neck of the woods, like in New York, New Jersey, California has massive judicial backlogs because they have a very complex system or process anyways. But yeah, it's interesting times. I think you guys will probably be a more needed service this year than you've ever been. Just because that 12 to 18 month California probate may take 18 to 24 months now, right?
Yeah, and we look at that a lot, Chad, because when we're doing our transactions, we're assuming some significant risks. Some of the risks are that the property doesn't sell for what we hoped, that the creditor's claims against the estate are larger than anticipated, that more errors show up than we originally banked on, so to speak, and of course that it all takes longer than we projected. So what we're doing in our business we'll put the cash out in 2-3 days after we get a call. Our whole business is to move quickly. Yeah. But then what we're doing is we're assuming the risk of waiting, and that risk has become, frankly, a lot more uncertain than it was 4 months ago. You could look at the history in a place like San Bernardino County or whatever and say, oh, well, if you file, it's likely to take X number of months. It was long, but we're a little bit less sure that we know how long it's actually going to take in a lot of places, as you say, around the country.
Yeah. Well, let's jump in and talk about let's show the folks what it looks like, in your day to day. So when a family contacts you, how you assess their needs, how, like you said, you can deploy capital in 2 to 3 days, which is amazing. I mean, that makes a huge difference. It's not a long drawn out underwriting process for the family. Like they can get rid of their pain like right now. So just walk our audience through, what does it look like when you work with most families? Like, what does a typical estate advance relationship look like? The term, what it looks like coming in, how long that lasts, where other things, like where you get paid back. Help them understand your risk position So how you secure your investment or don't secure it, how you get paid back. And let's just talk about kind of the timeline of what a usual deal, kind of a day-to-day deal looks like.
Yeah, those are great questions. And some of the answers at the very beginning really depend on who is it that's calling in. Is it the actual family member who isn't being advised by a real estate professional or a lawyer who's just found us on the internet or in some way? Or is it a professional? Because I think the state of mind that a person arrives at the problem, comes to the problem with, affects the process, how long it takes, and their understanding of how to work. I actually think one of the great things about what you do is you help so many people help other people with knowledge of this sort of thing. So, for example, we may get a call from somebody who will say, they'll be intrigued by something they saw about us on the internet, and they'll say, well, my grandparent died a month ago, so I'm not sure I even need this because I expect they'll sell the house in a week and then I'll get the money the next day. And they're not really coming from a place of understanding that they even have the problem that we try to solve.
Right.
Professionals, of course, do, because they've been through it more than once. They understand. As you said, it can take a year or two in some places from start to finish. But let's assume that we're talking to a person who at least understands that it's not instantaneous between the time someone passes and the time the heirs are estate is going to have money. One common feature that's true for estate law, and that varies by county and by state all over the United States, but there's certain common features that you can understand that's true in America. Frankly, it's true in Australia, it's true in Canada, which is when someone passes away, all of their property, their house, their stocks and bonds, their bank accounts, etc., is what is often referred to as their estate, as you know. And then, of course, people often have debts. They have credit card bills, they have doctor's bills, they may have a mortgage that sits on their property, they have taxes which are owed. So they have obligations. And so the first thing that has to happen in any process is to sort of figure out what's the total amount of the estate's assets and the total approximate amount of the estate's liabilities and obligations. And hopefully there's a difference between the two. There's a positive net worth so that there's more than enough assets than there are liabilities. But it's not always clear to an heir on the day after the loss of a loved one exactly how things stand and who the creditors are and who all the heirs are. So there's a process that we don't do, but is done by lawyers in the courts or the folks, the executor is principally responsible, of figuring that out, sending out notices to creditors, sending out notices to known heirs, creating a sort of a set series of deadlines that says, okay, if you think you're an heir, you got up to a certain amount of time to raise your hand and show up and make a claim. If you're a creditor, let's figure out what you're owed. What did this person owe? Who's the stockbroker? Assess all of that. And let's assume that after that process, there is a positive, there is going to be something to be inherited. If there isn't, then there's nothing to discuss. There's no advance to be done, etc. If, assuming there is, and there often is, then the question is, someone has to take charge of making this all happen. And in most estates in America, where there's positive net worth, the single biggest asset is the family home. And in many estates, frankly, the only real asset is the family home. Many people pass away. They don't have big investment accounts or stocks and bonds or piles of cash in accounts. They have the family home, and maybe the mortgage is paid off or paid down, but there's positive equity in that home. Now, the problem is, for many folks, whether they're advised or not, is got to get that home sold. Of course, that's where the realtor or real estate agent comes in. But oftentimes, if that home has been lived in by some elderly folks for a long period of time, maybe it's fallen into disrepair. It needs a coat of paint. There's yard work that hasn't been done. The weeds are in there. I think most realtors understand the kind of property we're describing. There may be work that needs to be done. But if there's no cash in the estate, it's just bills to be paid. How do you get that work done? Where does the executor or the heirs have to come out of pocket? Can they come out of pocket to get that done so you can clean up the property, spruce it up, and get a fair price for it when you sell it? So a lot of the calls we get are motivated by people looking for a solution for that problem. They have a property that's going to be sold in an estate sale. It might be worth, if it's cleaned up and looks nice, and $500,000. But if you have to just dump it in a fire sale because there's weeds there and the appliances are old and it's dirty and hasn't been cleaned, and it's going to take $20,000 to fix it up, that property may go for 400 and not 500, especially if the heirs are very anxious to get it done and are under pressure to sell quickly. So what will motivate either a seller, if they know about this service, or their advisors to consider a service such as ours is, where do you get that 10, 20, 30, 40, $50,000 you need to do that work, maybe to provide some advances to the heirs who are impatient and panicking, and who are therefore vulnerable to accepting the first lowball bid that comes along because they want to get it all wrapped up and done. Where do you get that money to calm the heirs down, essentially, to get the work done and to maximize the sale value of the property? That's where we come in. Now, I'm going to pause for a second. I can talk about then what we need to know and how the process works. But Chad, I may have talked too much about what the problem is and not enough about the solution, but I thought at least your folks would either recognize situations where they've seen that problem arise or not.
Well, I mean, you got to understand, we have a broad audience. We have investors and realtors tuning in that some have done hundreds or thousands of deals, and some are just getting started, and they're not that familiar with the probate process. So I think it's good to set a foundation. For anyone who's followed All the Leads for a while, you know that I teach you to turn your contractors into lenders. Oftentimes, the reason I was looking for a company like yours is I've for years trained real estate professionals to go find the right contractors, the guy with the $80,000 pickup that shows up at 6 a.m. to pick up materials because he has cash reserves, right? He's running his business like a business. And what I do is I'll have him charge a 10% premium on top of his construction invoice, record a mechanics lien, submit invoice to escrow, and submit an invoice to the court. So he gets those layers of protection. However, finding a contractor with deep pockets and cash reserves and one in the beginning of a relationship who's willing to take that kind of risk with the family, it's not the easiest thing to do. It takes some skill to. So for the average person, that's not a great answer. For someone who's really confident and has an established business, they have no problem doing that. So I think it's good, it's good to cover the basics, right? So we've established a need for that, and it's obvious in all 50 states. I mean, there's even a need, like one of the things that I don't know if you guys have ever done these, but I teach people to partner with the family. So you establish a basis value for the asset today, as is, where is. You go in, you partner with the family. You either tear the house down and start over, or you bring construction funds in, and then you split the net gain after commissions are paid, sale costs. So we teach progressive finance things like that, but it's not everybody wants to do the more complex strategies like that, or they're just not comfortable with it. So having a company like you guys to step in can make that a lot easier, right? So in San Francisco, oftentimes you can find a mid-century ranch that's worth $500,000 as it sits. You can tear it down and sell it shovel ready as a planned permitted project for $1.5 million. Well, some people aren't going to want to take that risk. They don't have the capital or the relationships with the city. But if you guys could advance $200,000 to raise the structure and get the planning and permitting back in place, then you could be the easy button for that San Francisco agent or investor, right? And that's what's exciting to me about you guys, like finally finding you guys. I've kissed a lot of frogs in your space. There's certainly people who I don't feel like have any compassion, any empathy, or very little ethics. And that's why you guys are here, because I didn't get that feel from you. And I'm excited to finally just say, guys, here's an easy button. Like, here's something that you can do without having to go learn like all the advanced tactics that I'm teaching. Um, so yeah, it's the foundation of, like, not everybody does understand the problem. People who are early in their careers in this, they haven't encountered a lot of that yet, but we have, right? We've been doing this for a long time, so we see the needs. So let's talk about what it looks like from the time the family contacts you, you establish, and I'm assuming you're relying on the list of assets and the list of liabilities from the court, correct?
We are exactly from the court or for the executors council. We're looking at a list of assets, liabilities. We have our own appraisal tools for the region, et cetera. So we're trying to get a sense of a range of possible outcomes for the sale of assets that are not, not marketable securities, et cetera. We're looking at the list of liabilities. We understand what the time window could be, how long or short it might be. We have a good sense of what the costs are likely to be along the way of paying lawyers and court fees, et cetera. We have a pretty good sense of figuring out whether the universe of potential heirs has been identified or whether there's any surprises out there. And so we then come up with our own sense of what we think whether it's an individual heir or the executor, is likely to net after all of these both expenses, liabilities, and assets, and when. And the other thing I think it's important for you and your folks to understand is it's not our intention to step into the place of the heir or executor and just buy out the whole situation. We are talking about an advance against a portion of what the person anticipates reaping at the end. Because we want whoever's involved, who's moving the estate along, to have skin in the game from an investor perspective, our perspective, and be motivated to see it through. We don't want somebody to say, here, this whole estate is now your problem, and you move it through to the end. What we're really doing is giving them a partial advance. So if an individual was going to be receiving, they thought, $100,000 at the end, we probably wouldn't want to advance more than 20 or 25 on that situation. It's a relatively modest advance. The other thing I should say is there's a cost to what we do. So people shouldn't take out more of an advance than they really need to accomplish a purpose that's going to have an enhanced value, right? You want to, it's just like any loan. You want to borrow as little as you can. This is not a loan, but any situation where you're taking money, you don't want to take more than you need to accomplish the purpose. You want to take what you need so you're either not under that pressure to sell quickly, or you can do the work that needs to be done to realize the real value. And there's one other situation I think you and others may recognize where people approach us, and that's when there's either a tenant or a family member still living in the property. So you may have a family home where most of the kids have moved away, but there's one kid or relative who's still living there, and it's hard to sell it for the family. And when you have one of these complicated situations, and oftentimes the individual who's still at home doesn't have the resources to just pick themselves up and find another place to live or make a down payment. So whether it's a bona fide tenant that you want to get out, maybe earlier than the lease allows for, so you can do the work and sell the property, or a family member who you care about but needs resources to relocate. We often see people come to us because they need the cash to do that, which is also a real world problem for the family that's inherited property like this.
It is. And I up until now, I've used social workers to navigate that. Oftentimes we'll get a social worker to connect them with a HUD certificate and get them suitable housing, and
Right.
sometimes family members have to, pay for moving expenses and things. But this certainly makes it a lot easier. Like, this is easier than telling somebody to go create a relationship with a social worker and then with a moving company and have people carry invoices for 90 days. And you guys can advance it, get them moved today, and we can move forward and do what we need to do with the asset.
So So how do we get paid? We wait, right? We wait, and we secure our position not with a lien on the property, but essentially we file a notice. This procedure is recognized in courts around the country. In some jurisdictions, there's even statutes that sort of allow for it. So we become an interested party in the probate proceeding itself. We get copies of what's happening in the case as it's moving along. And when it comes time to distribute to the heir or the executor or whoever we've advanced to, they have assigned to us a pre-agreed portion of what they would otherwise receive that we will get at the time of final distribution, which may be a year or two later.
So you guys, just to be clear, you guys are not on the line with the creditors. You're on the line below on the family distribution.
Correct. We are not. We are the
So
creditors, the senior.
It's important to understand, guys, like from their risk standpoint, the administration costs are being paid. The final taxes, state, local, and federal taxes are being paid. Then the general debtors are being paid, or creditors are being paid. Then the distribution happens. So these guys are taking a risk position literally on the bottom line of distribution. That's why they have to be conservative from an LTV, a loan to value standpoint, or what they'll advance. He said 20, 25 on 100. Because there could be surprises. There could be back taxes that nobody knew about that come in at the last second from the IRS, and that takes a bigger chunk out above the line that they're sitting on. So I think it's important for people to understand the progression. Like I would tell people often, a lot of people think probate is about asset distribution. It's about getting the government paid, man. Like it's everybody's got their hand out. And then finally, if anything's left, the family gets distributions, right?
Chad, you're absolutely right. It leads into another thing about our pricing. Sometimes folks will take more than one advance over time from us. So the farther off we are from the conclusion, the more uncertainty there is in the process, the more conservative we are. As we move through the process, as the deadline for creditors showing up comes and goes, and now we're pretty sure we know what the amount of the debt is. As the deadline for the government to say what it's owed comes and goes. As those sources of uncertainty start to come out of the situation, we can comfortably be more aggressive in our advance rate. And so what we will sometimes do is make an advance that's a conservative advance necessarily, for the reasons you stated, because we're not really sure how it's going to turn out and how long it's going to take. And then as we go through the process and some of that risk and uncertainty comes out of the situation, we can get comfortable advancing more and feel like it's less likelihood that there'll be surprises. So that also means that there's no one size fits all answer as to what the cost is or what the rates are. It's really a matter of advance rate, and the advance rate tends to be quite situational, as you put it, based upon how risky, how many unknowns there are, or how comfortable we are that we're not going to be surprised. And as the proprietor, I can tell you that we're inclined to be, at one level, more cautious with very big advances, for obvious reasons, but also more aggressive on pricing, in a sense. And why would that be? Well, for the cautiousness, I think people can understand. It's much more painful to lose a lot of money because you guessed wrong than to lose a small amount of money. But for the aggressiveness on pricing, everything we're talking about now takes the attention and the bandwidth of our in-house lawyers and paralegals and analysts to very quickly get comfortable with their understanding of the situation. And frankly, it costs that as much in that kind of time and underwriting to do a $5,000 deal as to do a $50,000 deal or a $500,000 deal. So we would prefer, and our pricing would reflect it, if we're going to spend that time and attention to understand the situation and make an advance or an investment in the situation, that we not spend $5,000 worth of time on a $5,000 advance. We prefer a bigger deal. But against that, we also like diversification and not making big mistakes. We prefer to understand. And when I say mistakes, there's uncertainty. So you just don't know how everyone is going to turn out.
Yep. One of the things I'm unclear on, or a question I have to back up in the process, is there ever a time where you will where you will fund an advance before the letters testamentary have been issued, like the authority is issued? So before the confirmation?
What I would say is I would never say never. And we have done that.
Okay.
It's very much the exception. And
I think this is an exceptional time. The reason I ask the question is you have literally hundreds of thousands of families sitting waiting for their confirmation hearing, and they've got continuances out into October in some places. So when it comes to property preservation, what if it's hurricane season and we're in Florida and, the property suffers damage that will get exponentially worse if they sit and wait for their confirmation hearing, and they didn't know about vacant house insurance. They had a standard homeowner policy and they've denied that claim. So that is an unforeseen circumstance that's hypothetical. I'm making it up, but it's a very likely scenario. So in that case, you have a $700,000-800,000 waterfront asset in Florida that actually the insurance claim was denied on, and now we've got a 6-month judicial backlog until they get to their confirmation hearing. That you can fund that deal, right?
Well, it's not very big, I'm afraid, but we can fund some of it.
But you would be comfortable putting a roof back on a house for, let's say, 20 grand.
Comfortable doing that, but I'll tell you what would affect our view of that situation, because each situation is different. Person's going to need to have a lawyer. We're going to need to have probably some professional who's there, who can say, yeah, I've been retained. This is supposed to be the executor. We would look at the title and make sure that the property existed, establish the relationship between the person who was reporting to be the executor and the property or the decedent, right? So there's the kinds of things that you would do, because we want to make sure we're not dealing with someone who just saw that house you're describing that needs the roof and gave us a call and say, hey, I think I'm going to be the heir in that estate, which hasn't yet been confirmed. And we don't want to find out later that they were just making it up. So it's a little more complicated for us to do that. And I think it would help us if there's a licensed professional that we know who can sort of vouch for what's really going on in the situation.
And that's because you're technically contracting with a person, not with the estate, correct?
Until there's been a confirmation and the executor appointed, we are at risk in that respect. So we don't have the protection. We don't feel that we wouldn't feel we had the protection we normally have, which is able to file something in a court proceeding and the other issue that we would have, risk we would have, I think it's a great hypothetical, but it's one that I haven't thought about before. So this is a real on the spot discussion. If one individual went and had this conversation with multiple advanced funders, if they could find multiple advanced funders, then I'd be worried, well, how are we going to find we're not filing liens. It's not like we can so we might have to find a way in that special situation to do some kind of UCC filing or some kind of notice filing to give us at least priority vis-a-vis other new lenders or creditors against either the person or the property. It is a tough situation because the confirmation hearing is designed to create that kind of certainty about, hey, who exactly can speak for the estate here and can bind the estate? And until you have that, third parties, us, have to worry that maybe we're transacting with the wrong person, or the person is transacting with multiple investors selling essentially the same Brooklyn Bridge 3 times or whatever. So these are the kinds of things we would think about. But what I'd say is the way we approach these problems is practically and creatively, but we're not reckless either, because we have to worry about, systematically, particularly in a situation like this described, making the wrong advance to the wrong person. Yeah.
Yep. So ideally, we want the confirmation hearing to be passed, and we have letters testamentary, and then you know exactly who. I'm assuming you're securing this with a promissory note. Is that right?
No, it's because it's not a loan. It's essentially a sale of an interest in an expected receivable.
Okay.
So it is not secured with a promissory note, because it isn't like there's an interest rate that's running day by day. And frankly, the other, both advantage for the individual, disadvantage for us maybe, but also a source of risk is, if the individual, if through no fraud, nobody lying about anything, it just turns out that the house doesn't sell for as much as we thought it would and they thought it would, or it takes longer than anybody thought, then that's too bad for us. We may not get what we were hoping to get. It's not like we can go have personal recourse against the heir as you would with a promissory note.
Right.
So these are kind of like non-recourse investments in the situation.
And that's kind of what I was getting at. I didn't have a clear understanding if you do have recourse on the individual. So
if they lie to us, if they say I'm Fred and they're really Joe, if they say, I'm, they phony up some papers and make it look like they're the heir and the letters. Of course, we have recourse, but it's not recourse that a lender would have. It's a recourse that a fraud victim would have in any situation where they invested in something based upon someone who told them something which wasn't true. But it's not like a loan where if someone's taking your money, they're using it for a purpose, and it doesn't work out, then it's their problem and they got to pay you back. This is not that.
So what's a typical advance amount and the time it takes to have that returned back to you guys? Like, is it, what amount do most families need? What do you find is like the common, like, I know it's obviously a range that you discussed.
Sweet spot.
Sorry?
The sweet spot.
Yeah. So like, what is that amount and how long does it usually take for that capital to return back to you guys?
It's probably our typical deal. Not mean, not average, because it gets pulled off by $1 million deals. But,
right.
As many deals are more than or less than this number, it's probably $25,000, $30,000.
Okay.
And, but we will do, every month we'll do a bunch of $60,000 or $70,000 deals. It's unusual for us to do $200,000, very unusual to do $4,000. So, and it tends to be with about, as I said, $25,000, $30,000, and the expected payback time really is a function of when in the process are we approached. So, if hypothetically the person comes in and they literally are just about to or just have gotten letters testamentary, it might be a year or two.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, people don't come to us on the first day. They thought the process would be quicker than it turns out to be.
I don't know. We've got it handled, Robin. No, we've got it. We have an attorney. It's handled.
Exactly. We'll hear from them in year four in the fourth month, or the fifth month, or we'll hear from the attorney saying, this person's calling me every day saying, where's my money? And I'm trying to explain to them that they're not going to get it for a year.
So I call that probate quicksand. They will sit there thinking everything is fine, just making little subtle movements, sinking deeper and deeper and deeper until one day they realize they're up to here. And that's usually when our customers get to come list me calls or come by this house. I need rid of this right now. It's become a problem. And, we try to reach out. We do reach out as early as possible to try to avoid that because it is such common behavior. So one of the, the two primary goals really of my career is to help families lower stress and accelerate the process. And number two is to retain equity. So if we can get them to take action, in the beginning, which is difficult because of probate quicksand, but if you can show them leadership, they're like, oh my God. And they just kind of submit and come with you. and you can shorten that timeline by months, and you can put literally tens of thousands of or hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity into the distribution by not sitting around paying property taxes and letting markets correct and all this other stuff. So our people are, you'll really like All the Leads customers, because our folks are really trained to do those two things: take away the, reduce the stress and time, and increase the equity or maximize the equity. And that's what we're trying to do. So I think that, the methodology that we use would shorten that cycle for you, because we're very proactively leading families through probate, not letting them
Yes.
continue to just, be reactive in the process.
Everything I know about what you're doing and how you're helping to educate your group reinforces the impression. It's a very high touch approach with the customer, right? It's really taking the customer's hand and helping them solve a problem. Sean, who's on with me and who I've worked with for 20 years on this and other businesses, listens to a lot of the phone calls we have. Most of this business is done over the phone, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And has heard a lot of customers talking to our people and explaining their situations and problems. And our people, I listen to some of these calls from time to time, and God bless them, they're very patient and they're really willing to help. And some of them have just done this for a long time. And Sean, what's your impression in terms of when you hear those calls and you're talking to people about?
I think it's people having. It's a very simple thing. They've got an asset. They'd like to get it done faster. They'd like to get the house fixed up. They'd like to get whatever. Like to pay something. I mean, whatever it is. I like about probate cash from listening to calls is typically we'll hear from a person, and a day or two, maybe at the most, we can make a decision and say, here's what we can do on this situation. And maybe 3 days later, they can have a wire transfer of the amount. I mean, it's not going to take a month. It's not going to take forever. And people can go and fix up the house and get it ready to sale. And as opposed to having to take a quick sale at, X, they can get the real value.
One thing you will not hear, I'm pretty sure, is the person's, not sure that it's for them, or they're not ready, or whatever. It's fine. It's a service, right? I mean, we're not going to chase anybody or tell them they need to do this. We want them to understand what they're getting, what they're giving up, how it could help them. They have to make that decision, advised by the people they're advising them. We have plenty of advances to make. We don't need to ever be in a situation where a person felt that they didn't want to do it or they were pressured to do it by us. Exactly. The situation may create its own pressure eventually, which will lead them to make the decision. But that is just not our style.
Yeah. So you guys are all 50 states, all 3,143 counties, correct?
We are, although like so many things, we get a lot more business in some counties than others.
Yeah, I imagine. What do you have stronger geographic regions where?
What it correlates to is where there's been, that starts the story is there's equity in the property, right? So there are some regions where there's a lot of probate going on, but they are probates where once you pay off the mortgage, pay the creditors, there hasn't been so much historical appreciation in residential real estate.
Like Buffalo, New York is an example.
Buffalo, New York may not be as big an opportunity as Riverside or San Bernardino counties in Southern California, or areas of the South Bay and the Bay Area, or suburbs of Atlanta or suburbs of Phoenix.
Right.
So it's what you'd expect. It's
where there's appreciation.
Yeah.
But it's a safe assumption that most anyone who's listening, you can do this in their market. Yes. Why don't you guys share what's the best way for our folks to get to know you guys, to learn more about what you do?
So, you can find us. We have a website, probatecash.com. We also have, it also will get you to more or less the same place, which is called daysnotyears.com, which I think pretty much tells the story. And we'll have some information there. We make it very easy for folks with the website to contact us. There's a button where you can just like hit the button. If you're using a mobile phone, you can send us a text. You hit a button, you can call us. You hit a button, you can send us an email or fill out a form. We have a number of very experienced people, paralegals, former real estate professionals. And by the way, some of them scattered around the country. We have one guy who's based in Hawaii. We have people based in California. A lot of our people are based in South Florida. Sean's in Knoxville, Tennessee. I'm in New York City. And many of them have worked for a long time together. And their job is to answer questions and help people understand whether what we have to offer helps fit their need. Our biggest challenge is educating people that there is such a service, making people aware that there's a solution to this problem. So
can I also jump in there, Robin? We have a guy, Tim Sykes, who's our director of real estate advice and support. And he can be reached at tim@probatecash.com. And I gave you, Chad, a little 2-pager that you can attach to this summary, and his contact information is there, and he's available, can be reached by text, call, or email, or whatever.
Okay. That being said, we're a pretty flat organization, or whatever the metaphor is. So if there's something that comes up that's new or strange or needs some creativity, people can escalate it very quickly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I and my partners get involved usually the same day.
Yeah, we're quick. That's the one thing, Chad. This is not going to take forever.
Yeah, 1 to 2 days. I mean, that's outstanding turnaround time for the risk profile of the investment you're making. Like from your perspective, that's not much time to underwrite $1 million deal.
We're not selling this paper. We're not like trying to hit the box of some government, agency or something like that.
Yeah, but you're still trying to cover your own risk in that amount of time. That's impressive. Like that.
Yes, exactly.
I think to your agents and people, I think that's really helpful. We're there to support them and get them answers quickly.
Sure. All right. Well, gentlemen, anything that I have not asked that you wish I would have that people should know?
We're here.
In the words of Sean, it's pretty simple. You have an asset and you have a value, and So, well, listen, I appreciate your time, guys. Thanks for being here. It's been a long road to find people I wanted to have this conversation with publicly. So I appreciate you being here and all the conversations we've had offline. And we'll get this. This is part of our Ask the Expert series. We will post the handout that Sean prepared for us. And if you guys have any questions at all, you can go to probatecash.com or daysnotyears.com. That's such a good domain. But these gentlemen can help you and your clients. So thanks so much, guys.
Hey, Chad, real pleasure. Thank you.